for human, for anybody? Is it proteins, vitamins, fats, water, or carbohydrates? How many people say protein? How many people say vitamins? How many people say fats? How many people say water? And how many people say carbohydrates? Good. Most of you were actually correct. It is water. And here is kind of the reason. The body can do quite well, with the exception of one condition in cats that we'll talk about, without food for a week, 2 weeks sometimes, depending on what the condition that animal was in beforehand. With water, they can function maybe 24, 72 hours before they really start to suffer from it. I mean, even a day of dehydration can cause problems in the breakdown. But if you think about water, basically, as I said there, without water, nothing else can get done. The processes that are controlled by the body or the body uses, water is involved in all of them. So it's needed for the breakdown of food into usable nutrients. Just think about if you were, when animals or us, we start chewing food. What's produced in our mouth? Saliva. What is a big portion of saliva? Water. That's the first part of the whole breakdown process of food into more simpler nutrients and building blocks and things like that. A lot of the chemical reactions through a process that we call hydrolysis are involved in breaking those food particles down with the help of enzymes into smaller particles rather, that the body can actually use for their absorption and things like that. Urine is mostly water. So, you need it for the excretion of waste materials. Without it, if you're dehydrated, you have to be really careful about not getting too dehydrated, or your body won't produce enough urine to remove waste products, and therefore those will build up and they can lead to problems of other systemic issues. And also, obviously, they're needed for maintaining homeostasis. Your blood pressure, the fluid components of your blood, all of that is controlled by water. So that's why water is so incredibly important in all of these processes. So, question number 2. Dogs are carnivores, omnivores, or herbivores? How many people say carnivores? How many people say omnivores? And how many people say herbivores? Alright, the answer is omnivores. Dogs do have the ability, although not great, to potentially utilize some of the nutrients that are found in plant products, vegetables, fruits, things like that. It's not as good as, say, a horse or a cow or a rabbit or a sheep or a goat or something like that. They can really break down those products. But they do have the ability to use some of those products, and along with the mainly meat-based diets that they have. So, looking at cats. Cats are carnivores, omnivores, or herbivores. How many people say carnivores? How many people say omnivores? And how many people say herbivores? The answer is, they are carnivores. Cats are obligate carnivores. They cannot extract really anything from the plant materials that they eat and stuff like that. And it's interesting when you look at some of this stuff, because a lot of the cat foods specifically that are out there nowadays, you see hairball control and things like that that are supposedly, and balanced diets that have, peas and greens and carrots and all that stuff in it. That's great, and may add a little flavor or something like that. What a lot of those products are designed to do is just add bulk to the food. It's designed to add fiber. And fiber basically is something that can't really be digested by these animals, broken down in any usable nutrients, but it does provide bulk to the stool, to the feces, things like that, that allows some of the hair material that they'll groom off themselves and pass through, so it'll help prevent hairballs and things like that from occurring. But as far as getting their nutrition, they're obligate carnivores. And if you think about the way their mouths are constructed with their teeth and stuff like that, their teeth are designed for ripping flesh off bone, things like that. If you think about the bigger cats, the lions, tigers, things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about food labeling now, and the way different foods are labeled. And like I said, this is a boring subject. It's hard to make it interesting, but we'll just have to try to kind of muddle on through it. So when you look at what's required on a food label, there's different regulations you look at. There are federal regulations, which are controlled by the United States Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration. This is countrywide, so whatever state you're in, it doesn't matter. There are certain things your food labels have to have. Then there's state regulations. So they have all of the federal regulations, but they also have other regulations that maybe is unique to their state. So in Pennsylvania, that would be stuff that would be controlled by the State Department of Agriculture and what they want to put on. And again, this is for dog food, cat food, horse feed, cow feed, chicken feed, you name it. There's things that have to be on that label. And then there's things when you look at, the one thing that everybody, consumers want to know when they look at diets as compared to, even their own diets, they want to know, is the diet that they're using balanced? So is it something where I don't have to supply vitamins, I don't have to supply extra nutrients, I can just feed my animal this diet and it'll be perfectly fine, it'll grow, it'll be healthy, all of that stuff. And that's where what we call AFCO comes in. And does anybody know what AFCO stands for? We'll get to it in a little bit, but or at least writing it out so you guys can see it. It stands for the Association of American Feed Control Officers, and basically their job is to act as an organization that conducts taste testing, basically, with animals, number one, to make sure that animals will like the food, and two, they will study the nutrient breakdowns of all of these foods and say, okay, based on the nutrients that are in the ingredients of this food is balanced, it's whole, you don't have to supplement your dog or cat with anything, this is enough to allow them to live a comfortable life, a healthy life, they won't need any kind of supplementation. So for those of you that are interested in the law aspect of things, or just curious for something that is really, really boring to read, in Pennsylvania, the rules of Pennsylvania, every law is based on what we call the Pennsylvania Code. And there's God knows how many chapters to it, but in the Pennsylvania Code, Chapter 72 deals with how pet foods have to be labeled. So that's where you would go. And so basically, Code 72 for Pennsylvania says this. As far as what's needed on a label, there's a couple of things. Obviously, you have to state what animal that food is designed for. So it has to say dog food or cat food, horse feed, cow feed, chicken feed, goat feed. Things like that. You can't put a food out there that just says General Mills pet food. It's because you don't know what it's for. It has to have a statement of that content. So if it's like a chicken-based flavor or a meat flavor or lamb and rice or something like that, you have to have a statement on there of what the main ingredient is going to be. The product name, obviously. So this is where you get into your Friskies or Kibbles and Bits or Purina, Pedigree, all the different names that are out there. You have what you call your guaranteed analysis and ingredients list, and we'll get into that in a little bit. It just kind of tells you exactly what's in the food and what percentages and things like that. And that comes into play when we talk a little bit about specialty diets later. So this way you know exactly what you're giving your animal. And then also listing of any artificial colors, dyes, things like that. And the reason I bring the ingredients thing and stuff like this up, looking at it from every day, is when I was in private practice or doing a little bit of it, you would have people that would come in and say, my dog is vomiting, or my dog has diarrhea. And the first question we always ask in those situations is, did you change the food? Did he get something into something that he shouldn't have? Did the food change? Is there something different? And they'll say no, 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 no. And the next thing we'll ask, okay, well, the next question we'll ask is, did you recently get a new bag or a new can or a new something of that same type of dog food? And they'll say yeah. And so a lot of times what happens is the brand doesn't change. What changes is one of the ingredients. And it's maybe something that's way down on the list, and we'll talk about how the things are listed in the ingredients in a second. But it's one of those things where the person doesn't even think of that. It may be a flavoring they changed, or it may be a specific vitamin or mineral that they changed, and that's actually what's throwing the dog's system off. It's not the fact that the food is necessarily bad, it's just the ingredient in that batch or that bag changed a little bit, and that's what's making them their diets upset and things like